It began with a letter, one that Chloe Harper never expected to receive. The envelope, cream-colored and embossed with gold trim, arrived on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning. The sender's name read Richard Harper Estates, a name she had long since relegated to the recesses of her mind. Her estranged father, a man she hadn't seen since she was 5, had passed away. More shocking than the news of his death was the content of the letter itself. She was named the primary heir to his billion-dollar empire. Chloe sat frozen in her cramped one-bedroom apartment, the letter trembling in her hands. Her father, a business tycoon who had chosen wealth over family, was a ghost in her memory. The last image she recalled of him was his retreating figure as he walked out of the house, leaving her mother in tears. Now, decades later, he had left her an inheritance that seemed both a blessing and a curse. Along with the fortune came an unsettling stipulation: she must live in his sprawling estate for 1 year, with the family she had never known. The thought of moving into the Harper estate was overwhelming. Chloe's life was far removed from the world of private jets and boardroom deals. A waitress at a downtown diner, she had scraped by for years, working double shifts to pay off student loans. Luxury was a concept she had only encountered in magazines. Yet, curiosity and the need for financial stability nudged her toward accepting the terms. What secrets could a family she'd never met possibly hold? When Chloe arrived at the Harper estate, the sheer opulence took her breath away. The mansion, a sprawling architectural marvel, sat at the end of a winding driveway flanked by manicured gardens. Marble columns and gilded fixtures adorned the entrance, and a fountain with cherub spraying water greeted her as she stepped out of the car. This was a world apart from the dingy apartment and second-hand furniture she'd known. The family, however, was less welcoming. Her half-siblings, Gregory and Amelia, eyed her with a mix of disdain and suspicion. Gregory, a polished businessman in his 40s, seemed particularly annoyed by her presence, while Amelia, a socialite dripping in diamonds, barely hid her contempt. "So, you're the prodigal daughter," Amelia had sneered during their first meeting. Chloe's attempts to connect were met with cold shoulders and cutting remarks. Dinner that evening was a tense affair. The family gathered in a grand dining hall with a table that could seat 20, though only 5 chairs were occupied. Alongside Chloe, Gregory, and Amelia was their stepmother, Eleanor, a woman whose icy demeanor matched her perfectly coiffed silver hair. She dominated the conversation, steering it away from any mention of Richard's will. Chloe felt like an outsider, her presence tolerated but not welcomed. As the days passed, Chloe began to uncover oddities in the Harper household. The staff, while polite, seemed reluctant to engage in conversation. Rooms in the mansion were kept locked, and whispers followed her down the grand hallways. One night, she overheard 2 maids discussing the incident that had taken place years ago. The fragments of their hushed conversation hinted at a scandal involving Richard and a mysterious woman. Chloe's curiosity was piqued. The mansion's library became her refuge. Among its towering shelves and leather-bound books, Chloe stumbled upon an old journal belonging to her father. The entries painted a picture of a man torn between ambition and regret. One passage stood out: "I built an empire but lost what truly mattered. Forgiveness is a luxury I may never afford." The cryptic words gnawed at her, raising more questions than answers. Chloe's quest for the truth intensified when she found a locked chest in her father's study. Despite her efforts, the chest refused to open. Frustrated, she sought help from the only person who seemed even remotely approachable, Robert, the estate's groundskeeper. Robert, a grizzled man in his 60s, had been with the Harpers for decades. Though initially hesitant, he agreed to help, revealing that Richard had trusted him with a key to the chest. Inside the chest, Chloe discovered a trove of documents, photographs, and letters. One letter, addressed to her mother, revealed that Richard had been forced to leave due to a scandal orchestrated by Eleanor and Gregory. Another document, a birth certificate, listed a name she didn't recognize: Michael Harper. The revelation shook her to her core. She had a brother she'd never known. Her confrontation with Eleanor the following day was explosive. Eleanor dismissed the letters as fabrications, claiming that Chloe was too naive to understand the complexities of their family. But the venom in her voice and the flicker of fear in her eyes suggested otherwise. Gregory's reaction was even more telling. He avoided Chloe entirely, his usual smugness replaced by unease. Determined to learn more, Chloe began piecing together the fragments of her father's life. Late-night searches in the mansion's archives led her to a series of financial records and legal documents that hinted at shady dealings. She discovered offshore accounts and suspicious transactions that implicated Gregory in embezzlement. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became that her father's empire was built on secrets and lies. Amidst the chaos, Chloe found an unexpected ally in Robert. He shared stories of Richard's softer side, recounting moments when the man had expressed regret over his choices. "He wanted to protect you," Robert said one evening as they walked through the gardens. "But the family, they're not as united as they seem." His words hinted at fractures within the Harper dynasty that went far beyond sibling rivalry. Chloe's relationship with Sophia, her young niece, offered a glimmer of hope. Unlike the adults, Sophia was warm and curious, often following Chloe around the estate. Through their interactions, Chloe began to see the potential for genuine connection amidst the web of deceit. Sophia's innocence reminded her of what was truly at stake. The tension in the household reached a boiling point when Chloe received an anonymous note slipped under her bedroom door. The note warned her to stop digging or face the consequences. It was a chilling reminder that her presence threatened to expose secrets some would rather keep buried. Fear mixed with determination as Chloe resolved not to back down. One evening, while exploring the east wing of the mansion, Chloe stumbled upon a hidden passageway. The dimly lit corridor led to a small room filled with old photographs and letters. Among them was a picture of a woman who bore a striking resemblance to her mother. The discovery raised more questions about her family's past and their connection to her own mother's struggles. As Chloe delved deeper into the mystery, she began to feel the weight of isolation. The family's hostility intensified, and even the staff seemed wary of her. Gregory's veiled threats and Eleanor's sharp comments became daily occurrences. Yet, the knowledge she uncovered only fueled her resolve to uncover the truth. Her investigation took an unexpected turn when she received a call from a journalist who claimed to have information about the Harper family. The journalist, a woman named Karen Lee, hinted at a decades-old scandal that had been buried by Richard's legal team. "If you want to know the truth about your father," Karen said, "meet me in town tomorrow." Chloe's mind raced with possibilities. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but she knew the full picture remained elusive. The following morning, she made her way to the meeting spot, a small cafe on the outskirts of town. As she waited for Karen, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Karen arrived, her demeanor cautious yet determined. Over steaming cups of coffee, she revealed details that left Chloe reeling. Richard had been embroiled in a cover-up involving a business rival's untimely death. The fallout had threatened to destroy the Harper empire, prompting Richard to make sacrifices he'd later regret. "Your father wasn't a saint," Karen admitted, "but he wasn't the villain your family wants you to believe either." As Chloe returned to the estate that evening, her mind buzzed with questions. The more she learned, the clearer it became that her father's legacy was a double-edged sword. Wealth and power had come at a steep cost, one that she now had to navigate. The question remained, who could she trust in a family built on deception? The discovery of an encrypted flash drive among her father's belongings added another layer to the mystery. The drive contained files labeled with cryptic names, each one potentially holding answers to the questions that haunted her. As Chloe stared at her laptop, the enormity of her task weighed heavily on her. She was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Her lawyer advised her against signing anything without a full review, but the Devereaux were pressuring her daily. They framed it as a way to cement her father's legacy, yet the vagueness of certain clauses unsettled her. Lionel, always lingering in the background, began dropping subtle hints about the empire's profitability. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," he said one evening over dinner. Helena's trust in her newfound family continued to waver as every gesture seemed calculated. The allure of the fortune was intoxicating, but at what cost? At first, they were tight-lipped and wary, but as days turned into weeks, small details began to leak. A cook shared stories of her father's obsessive need for control, while a gardener spoke of nights when he'd hear shouting from the mansion's east wing. Helena pieced together fragments of a story that painted her father as both a shrewd businessman and a deeply flawed man. One evening, an elderly housekeeper slipped her a faded photograph of her father with a woman who wasn't her mother. "He hid much," the woman whispered. Shadows seemed to stretch longer in the hallways, and footsteps echoed faintly when she was alone. She began checking her phone for tracking apps and sweeping her room for cameras. Her paranoia heightened when she found a tiny listening device under her bed. Her fury bubbled over, and she confronted Lionel. "Do you think this is a game?" she demanded, slamming the device onto the dining table. Lionel's expression flickered with what looked like surprise, then amusement. "Welcome to the family," he replied, his voice dripping with condescension. Late one night, unable to sleep, Helena wandered the corridors and stumbled upon a locked door. It was sturdy, reinforced with steel, and bore no sign of a keyhole. Her curiosity piqued when she heard faint humming from behind it. The next day, she asked Lionel about the room, but his dismissive shrug only deepened her intrigue. Determined to uncover the truth, Helena enlisted the help of a tech-savvy maid who knew the mansion's ins and outs. Together, they devised a plan to bypass the lock. It opened to a hidden library, its walls lined with leather-bound books and folders. In the center of the room stood a table piled high with documents marked confidential. Among them were dossiers on her, her mother, and even her late grandmother. Helena's breath caught as she flipped through pages revealing financial transactions, surveillance records, and letters her father had written but never sent. Most disturbing was a file labeled Helena's Placement, detailing her adoption into her foster family. Every word reinforced the orchestrated nature of her life. Helena realized her father had orchestrated every major event in her life, from her education to her career opportunities. The more she read, the clearer it became that her mother had been deliberately erased from her life. One file hinted at a tragic incident involving her mother, leading Helena to suspect foul play. She knew confronting Lionel or Celeste would only tip them off to her discoveries, so she decided to play along for now. But her resolve to dig deeper hardened. She couldn't leave without the answers she deserved. Celeste started attending business meetings alongside Helena, undermining her at every opportunity. "You're new to this world," Celeste would say with a saccharine smile. Lionel, meanwhile, began pulling her aside for private conversations about investments that seemed too good to be true. The walls of the mansion closed in as she felt her autonomy slipping away. Each dinner conversation became a strategic game of veiled threats and subtle power plays. "We're only trying to help you," Lionel said, but Helena could see the cracks in their facade. Old friends stopped answering her calls, and her lawyer's advice became frustratingly vague. One day, Helena decided to contact an investigative journalist she'd once admired. Meeting in a quiet cafe miles from the mansion, she handed over photocopies of some library documents. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Grace, promised to look into it. "If even half of this is true, it's explosive," Grace said. Helena felt a flicker of hope but also dread. If her family discovered her betrayal, she wasn't sure what lengths they'd go to protect their secrets. Celeste announced plans to renovate the mansion's east wing, which struck Helena as odd. "Why now?" she asked. Celeste's smile didn't reach her eyes as she responded, "It's overdue for a fresh start, wouldn't you agree?" Helena felt the weight of the hidden library pressing on her. She excused herself early and raced to the room, only to find it locked again. This time, the lock had been upgraded. Panicking, she realized her family might have discovered her intrusion. She couldn't afford to lose access to those files. Wherever she went, his presence loomed. "You've been spending a lot of time exploring," he remarked one afternoon, his tone casual but his gaze piercing. Helena feigned nonchalance, but her heart raced. She started taking notes in code, hiding them in the lining of her suitcase. At night, she began sleeping with a chair wedged against her bedroom door. Her fear of Lionel's intentions deepened when she overheard him on the phone, saying, "She's more like her father than I thought. We need to keep her in line." It was slipped under her door and written on plain stationery, "The East Wing holds the answers you seek." Midnight. Her instincts screamed it was a trap, but curiosity and desperation drove her. As the clock struck 12, she crept through the mansion's shadowy halls. When she reached the East Wing, she found another door slightly ajar. The room beyond was barren except for a single box on the floor. As she approached, a faint noise made her freeze. Someone was watching, waiting. Helena's hands shook as she flipped through images of her parents in happier times. Some were dated long before her birth, while others captured moments she barely remembered. Among the tapes was one labeled Final Will. The discovery filled her with equal parts hope and fear. Before she could examine them further, footsteps approached. Helena barely had time to hide behind a curtain as Lionel entered, his expression dark. He rummaged through the box briefly before muttering, "She's getting too close," and leaving with one of the tapes. She now had tangible proof of her father's secrets, but without the tape Lionel had taken, the full story remained elusive. She began devising a plan to recover it, knowing she couldn't trust anyone in the family. Days turned into a tense waiting game as she plotted her next move. In the meantime, Grace sent her an encrypted email. "Big findings. Meeting soon." Helena felt a sliver of hope, but knew she was walking a tightrope. One misstep could send her spiraling into the abyss her family seemed intent on hiding. The tension in the mansion grew unbearable. Helena avoided Lionel and Celeste as much as possible, keeping her movements subtle and her suspicions hidden. Her nights were filled with restless dreams of her father's voice, urging her to uncover the truth. She began to piece together a timeline from the photographs, notes, and fragments of conversations, finding disturbing inconsistencies in the family's official story. Each discovery left her with more questions than answers, deepening her determination to uncover the full truth. The staff grew wary of her probing questions. Whispers followed her through the halls, and a few of the more loyal employees began distancing themselves. Helena noticed a distinct change in their demeanor, their once welcoming smiles replaced by guarded glances. The cook, once a source of small but revealing anecdotes, started avoiding her entirely. She wondered if Lionel or Celeste had threatened them or if they, too, were part of the sprawling conspiracy. Her late-night meetings with Grace became a lifeline. Grace's investigative skills were unmatched, and she had managed to decode part of the files Helena had shared. "Your father didn't just build an empire," Grace revealed one evening. "He created a web of control over his family, his business partners, and even political figures. Some of this goes beyond personal secrets, Helena. This is dangerous." The weight of her words struck Helena hard. She wasn't just fighting for her identity but also against a legacy of corruption. One night, Helena overheard Celeste and Lionel arguing in the study. Their voices, usually measured and manipulative, were loud and raw with emotion. "You're losing control of her," Celeste hissed. "If she finds out what really happened to her mother," Lionel's sharp interruption silenced her, but the damage was done. Helena's breath caught in her throat. What had they done to her mother? She pressed her ear closer to the door, but their voices dropped, and the conversation ended abruptly. The East Wing renovations began in earnest, but Helena knew it was a smokescreen. Workers were frequently seen hauling away crates and equipment, and the family avoided the area entirely. Helena suspected they were erasing something important, evidence of whatever had transpired there in the past. She tried to slip into the wing during a rare moment of quiet, but a worker stopped her, his face blank but his tone firm. "This area is off limits, ma'am." It was clear they were under strict orders to keep her out. Desperation pushed Helena to take greater risks. She installed a hidden camera outside the East Wing and began recording the comings and goings of the workers. Reviewing the footage late at night, she noticed a pattern. One man, in particular, seemed to linger longer than the others, often emerging with a bag or box. Helena decided to confront him, catching him in the mansion's garage. "What are you taking out of there?" she demanded, blocking his path. He hesitated but finally muttered, "I don't know anything. They just told me to clean up the mess." That cryptic statement haunted her. The word mess seemed loaded with meaning, implying something far more sinister than clutter. Helena felt the walls closing in, her family's lies pressing against her from all sides. She turned to the remaining staff who still seemed loyal to her. The tech-savvy maid, who had helped her access the library, shared another critical detail: there was a hidden safe in the East Wing study. It was rumored to hold documents her father never intended anyone to see. The safe became her next target. Helena spent nights researching how to bypass its security, knowing she couldn't rely on anyone else. She even considered hiring a professional, but feared bringing an outsider into the mansion's volatile environment. Her opportunity came during a family dinner when Lionel and Celeste were preoccupied with entertaining a group of business associates. She slipped away, her heart pounding, and made her way to the East Wing. Inside the study, she found the safe exactly where the maid had described it, hidden behind an ornate painting. It was larger than she had expected, with a digital keypad and a biometric scanner. She had come prepared, using a hacking tool to override the keypad. The scanner was trickier, but she managed to find a workaround using an old fingerprint kit she'd discovered in the library. When the safe finally clicked open, her hands trembled as she reached inside. The contents were chilling. Among the papers and USB drives was a folder marked Project Inheritance. The documents detailed a scheme to manipulate Helena into taking over the Empire while keeping her in the dark about its darker dealings. There were also receipts for payments to individuals who had interacted with her throughout her life: foster parents, teachers, even college advisors. Everything had been orchestrated to groom her for this moment. Her anger boiled over as she realized how deeply she had been controlled. One USB drive caught her attention. It was labeled with her mother's name and the date of her death. She knew it was risky, but she couldn't wait to see what it contained. Back in her room, she locked the door and inserted the drive into her laptop. The files were encrypted, but her tech-savvy maid had also provided her with software to crack the code. As the files opened, her screen filled with videos, photos, and transcripts that painted a horrifying picture of betrayal and greed. The videos were the hardest to watch. One showed her mother arguing with her father in what appeared to be the mansion's East Wing. Her mother's voice, filled with desperation and anger, echoed through the room. "You're destroying everything," she shouted. The video cut off abruptly, but the transcript continued the story. It suggested that her mother had uncovered a deal her father had made, one that endangered not just their family but others as well. Helena's heart sank as she realized her mother had likely paid the ultimate price for her knowledge. Helena barely had time to process the files before a knock on her door startled her. It was Lionel, his expression unusually serious. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Helena quickly closed her laptop, but she knew the tension between them was palpable. "You've been digging where you don't belong," Lionel said, his voice calm but threatening. "This isn't a game, Helena. If you don't stop, you'll regret it." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, leaving her shaken but resolute. Every step Helena took from that moment felt like walking a tightrope. She couldn't confront Lionel directly without risking exposure, but she also couldn't sit idly by. She began planting false leads, pretending to shift her focus away from the East Wing while secretly continuing her investigation. She even staged a few outbursts during family dinners, hoping to convince them she was losing interest in the Empire. Her performance seemed to work, as Lionel's vigilance began to wane. But Celeste wasn't so easily fooled. Her sharp eyes followed Helena everywhere, her demeanor icy and calculating. One evening, Celeste cornered her in the library, her tone as sweet as poison. "You've been so busy lately, dear. Are you finding everything you need?" Helena forced a smile, feigning ignorance. "Just trying to learn more about my father's legacy," she replied. Celeste's smile didn't waver, but her eyes betrayed her suspicion. "Good," she said. "We wouldn't want you to feel out of place here." Helena knew her time was running out. Every move she made brought her closer to the truth, but also increased the risk of exposure. She had to decide whether to keep pushing forward or cut her losses and escape with the evidence she had. As the shadows deepened around her, she realized that the next step she took could change everything, either bringing her closer to freedom or binding her forever to the Empire's dark legacy. Helena sat alone in her room, the weight of the USB drive's revelations pressing against her chest like a physical force. Her mother's voice from the video replayed in her mind, filled with pain and anger. It wasn't just the betrayal by her father that hurt, it was the realization that her entire life had been manipulated. Every choice she thought was hers, every moment of independence, was a calculated move in someone else's game. Tears streamed down her face as she grappled with the enormity of the deception. The mansion felt like a prison now, every ornate detail a reminder of the secrets it held. Even the staff, who once seemed harmless, now felt like potential spies. Helena couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. She paced the floor, her mind racing with questions. What had her mother uncovered that was so dangerous? And why was Lionel so determined to control her? She wanted to scream, to smash every reminder of her father's empire, but she knew that would only make her more vulnerable. One night, while staring out her bedroom window, Helena saw something unusual. A faint light flickered in the east wing, despite the renovations supposedly being paused. She watched intently as shadows moved behind the curtains. Someone was working late into the night, and it wasn't just construction. Her pulse quickened as she realized she had to act. Whatever was happening there was the key to unraveling the family's lies. She grabbed a flashlight and slipped into the dark hallways. The mansion's silence was deafening, broken only by the creaks of the floor beneath her feet. She moved carefully, her heart pounding with every step. Reaching the east wing, she found the door unlocked, a detail that both surprised and unnerved her. She pushed it open, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The room was cluttered with tools and papers, but what caught her attention was a desk in the corner, covered in documents. She approached cautiously, her hands trembling as she rifled through the papers. What she found made her blood run cold. They weren't just family records or business dealings, they were legal documents outlining secret offshore accounts, blackmail schemes, and even evidence of bribes to government officials. Among the papers was a handwritten note from her father to Lionel, instructing him to handle the problem if Helena ever became a threat. The casual mention of her as a problem shattered her resolve. She had always felt distant from her father, but this was a level of coldness she couldn't comprehend. A sudden noise behind her made her freeze. She turned slowly, the flashlight shaking in her hand, to see Celeste standing in the doorway. Her expression was calm, almost amused, but her eyes were ice. "Curiosity runs in the family, doesn't it?" Celeste said, stepping closer. Helena tried to mask her fear, shoving the papers behind her back. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice faltering. Celeste's smile didn't waver. "The real question is, what are you doing here, Helena?" Helena felt trapped, her mind scrambling for an escape. "I wanted answers," she said finally, her voice firm despite the terror coursing through her. "About my father, about this family." Celeste tilted her head, as if considering her words. "And did you find them?" she asked, her tone deceptively gentle. Helena didn't answer. She couldn't trust Celeste, but she also couldn't lie convincingly. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken threats. Finally, Celeste sighed. "You're playing a dangerous game, my dear." The following days were a blur of tension and paranoia. Helena knew Celeste was watching her, but she didn't know how much she had seen or what she planned to do. Every interaction felt like a test, every conversation laced with hidden meaning. Even Grace, her one ally outside the mansion, seemed distant. Helena couldn't risk telling her too much over the phone, and their meetings had become sporadic. She felt more alone than ever, trapped in a web she didn't fully understand. One evening, Lionel called for a family meeting in the grand dining room. Helena's stomach churned as she took her seat, the opulent surroundings feeling like a mockery of her turmoil. Lionel and Celeste sat at the head of the table, their expressions unreadable. "We have some important matters to discuss," Lionel began, his voice measured. Helena braced herself, wondering if this was the moment he would confront her. Instead, he announced plans to expand the empire, his words dripping with pride. As the conversation shifted to business strategies and charity galas, Helena felt a surge of anger. How could they sit there, discussing profits and public image, while their family was built on lies? She couldn't stay silent any longer. "What about the secrets?" she blurted out, her voice cutting through the room. The table fell silent, all eyes on her. Lionel's expression hardened, but it was Celeste who spoke first. "Secrets are a necessary part of any legacy," she said smoothly. "You'll learn that soon enough." Helena's outburst had consequences. Lionel became more controlling, limiting her access to certain parts of the mansion and keeping her under constant surveillance. The few staff members who had been friendly now avoided her entirely, their fear palpable. She felt suffocated, her every move scrutinized. But the more they tried to contain her, the more determined she became. She refused to be a pawn in their game, even if it meant risking everything. One night, she received an anonymous note slipped under her door. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear: "The answers you seek are in the garden crypt." Midnight. Helena's first instinct was to ignore it. It could easily be a trap, but her curiosity got the better of her. She waited until the mansion was quiet, then slipped outside, the cool night air biting against her skin. The garden was eerily still, the crypt looming like a shadow in the moonlight. Pushing open the heavy door, she stepped inside, her flashlight revealing rows of ornate tombs. At the far end, she saw a figure waiting. Her breath caught as she approached, unsure of what to expect. The figure turned, revealing a face she didn't recognize, a man in his 40s, his features sharp and weary. "You don't know me," he said, his voice low. "But I know you. And I know the truth about your father." Helena's heart raced as she realized she might finally have the answers she needed. The man introduced himself as Adrian, a former employee of her father's who had been forced out when he discovered too much. He handed her a folder filled with documents and photographs, his expression grim. "Your father wasn't the man you think he was," Adrian said. "And if you want to survive this, you need to be smarter than he ever gave you credit for." Helena felt a surge of both fear and determination. She didn't know if she could trust Adrian, but she knew she couldn't stop now. The folder revealed even darker truths than she had imagined. Her father's empire wasn't just built on manipulation and corruption, it was tied to criminal enterprises that spanned the globe. Money laundering, illegal arms deals, and connections to dangerous individuals were all meticulously documented. Helena felt sick as she realized the full extent of the legacy she had inherited. But among the horrors, one detail stood out, a connection between her father and her mother's death that couldn't be ignored. Adrian urged her to act quickly. "They'll come after you if they suspect you know this," he warned. "You need to find allies and build your own leverage." Helena nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. She couldn't rely on the family staff, and Grace could only help so much from the outside. She needed to find someone within the mansion who could be trusted, or at least manipulated into helping her. The game was far from over, but Helena was no longer playing by their rules. Helena stepped into the light of a new dawn with a renewed sense of purpose. The revelations had broken her, but they had also awakened her strength. She was no longer just a pawn in her family's twisted game. She decided to turn the legacy she had inherited into something meaningful, something good. The darkness she had uncovered wouldn't define her. Instead, she would use it as a foundation to build a brighter future, not just for herself, but for everyone impacted by her father's actions. She began by reaching out to Grace, her steadfast ally. Together, they pored over the documents Adrian had given her, creating a plan to expose the corruption while protecting the innocent. It wouldn't be easy. Her father's empire was vast, its roots deeply entrenched in systems of power. But Helena believed in justice, and for the first time, she believed in herself. Grace's unwavering support reminded her that she wasn't alone in this fight, and that made all the difference. Helena decided to confront Lionel, not with fear, but with resolve. She found him in the study, surrounded by symbols of wealth and power that now felt hollow. "I know everything," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm not going to let this continue." Lionel smirked, dismissing her as naive, but Helena stood her ground. "You underestimated me," she said firmly. "But this ends now. I'll rebuild this family's name the right way, no matter what it takes." Word of Helena's determination spread through the household. To her surprise, some of the staff began to show quiet support. They had long suffered under the weight of the family's secrets, and Helena's courage inspired them. The mansion, once cold and oppressive, began to feel like a place of possibility. Helena knew she couldn't undo the past, but she could create a future where people felt valued and respected. It was a small but significant step toward healing. As Helena took control of the empire, she made sweeping changes. She dismantled the illegal operations her father had built, channeling the wealth into philanthropic efforts. She funded schools, hospitals, and community centers, prioritizing the well-being of those who had been exploited. Each act of kindness was a step toward redemption, not just for her family's name, but for herself. She learned to forgive her father's mistakes, not to excuse them, but to free herself from the anger that had consumed her. Celeste's reaction was unexpected. Rather than fighting Helena's changes, she expressed a reluctant admiration for her niece's resolve. "You've done what none of us could," she admitted one evening. "You've turned our shame into something meaningful." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. Helena saw glimpses of humanity in Celeste, realizing that even those who seemed irredeemable could change. It gave her hope that transformation was possible, even for the most broken among them. Adrian became a close advisor, helping Helena navigate the complexities of her father's business dealings. He guided her through the legal challenges and connected her with trusted allies who shared her vision for ethical leadership. Through his mentorship, Helena learned the value of persistence and integrity. Together, they began to untangle the web of corruption, replacing it with systems of accountability and transparency. The journey was arduous, but each victory reaffirmed her belief in the power of change. Helena also found healing in unexpected places. She reconnected with the siblings she had once viewed as rivals, building relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. They, too, had been victims of the family's toxic legacy, and together they worked to create a culture of openness and trust. For the first time, Helena felt like she belonged, not because of wealth or power, but because of the love and support they offered one another. The mansion, once a symbol of oppression, was transformed into a center for innovation and community engagement. Helena opened its doors to the public, hosting workshops, art exhibitions, and charitable events. She wanted the world to see that change was possible, that even the darkest past could lead to a brighter future. The laughter of children and the hum of activity filled the halls, replacing the eerie silence that had once haunted her. It became a place of hope. Helena's journey taught her invaluable lessons about resilience and the importance of staying true to one's values. She realized that wealth and power were meaningless without purpose. By focusing on service and compassion, she discovered a deeper sense of fulfillment than she had ever imagined. Her story became an inspiration to others, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the transformative power of forgiveness and determination. As years passed, Helena's efforts bore fruit. Communities once plagued by neglect and exploitation began to thrive. Children who had no hope for the future found opportunities to learn and grow. Families torn apart by hardship were reunited. Helena's legacy became one of empowerment and renewal, a stark contrast to the shadow her father had cast. The gratitude and joy she witnessed in others filled her heart, reminding her why she had chosen this path. Despite the challenges, Helena remained humble. She never forgot the pain and betrayal she had endured, but she used it to fuel her commitment to justice. She often visited the crypt in the garden, not out of sorrow, but as a reminder of where her journey had begun. It was there she found the strength to forgive her father completely, understanding that his flaws did not define her. She chose to honor the good she found in his memory, however small it might have been. Her relationship with Grace deepened into a lifelong partnership. Together, they founded a nonprofit dedicated to empowering young women to overcome adversity and pursue their dreams. Helena shared her story openly, hoping to inspire others to rise above their circumstances. She wanted the world to see that no matter how daunting the challenges, change was always possible. The nonprofit became a global movement, touching countless lives and solidifying Helena's impact on the world. Helena's story wasn't just one of triumph, it was a reminder that life is a journey of growth and transformation. She learned to embrace vulnerability and to trust in the goodness of others. The love and connections she built along the way were more valuable than any empire. Her life was a testament to the idea that even in the face of darkness, we can find light, and that by choosing kindness and courage, we can create a legacy that truly matters. As she stood on the balcony of the mansion, now a vibrant hub of hope and change, Helena felt a sense of peace she had never known. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the joy in her heart. She had turned her pain into purpose, her fear into strength, and her isolation into community. The journey had been far from easy, but it had been worth every step. Helena smiled, knowing that her story was far from over, because the best legacies are the ones that continue to inspire long after we're gone. Thank you for watching. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section, like, share, and subscribe for real-life stories like this one. Until next time, have a nice day.